Welcome back. I'm now joined by Matthew from our business desk. Hello again, Matthew. Now we're going to start off with a look at the US markets. They've been having a bit of a turbulent time since the re-election of Barack Obama.
Yes, they are. They're worried about the so-called fiscal cliff. This is the package of tax rises and spending cuts that are going to come into effect in January unless a deal is done on the debt. Well, now that Barack Obama is back in the White House, they are sending a signal in a way to say we need you to sort this out. And that signal was pretty strong in Wednesday's trading. The US markets all falling by around 2.5%, Nasdaq and Dow Jones there. Also in Asia, markets have been reacting in a similar way, not quite as steep. The falls there, down around 1.5% in most markets.
And there's another thing worrying the markets, and that is Europe.
That's right. So this was also adding into the mix. The European Commission gave new forecasts yesterday for the Eurozone, and they were downgraded. As you can see there, flat pretty much for 2013. 2014, bit brighter, 1.4% growth expected then.
Now in Greece, the Parliament narrowly passed agreement for another austerity package, but there are still some obstacles to overcome.
There are some obstacles. Now this, of course, is because Greece badly needs the next 31.5 billion euro instalment of its bailout loan. And Wednesday's vote, you say, was the first important step towards that. But the deal now needs approval from Eurozone finance ministers.
It was a make-or-break vote for the Greek Parliament on whether to approve a crucial new austerity bill.
Will we allow ourselves to go bankrupt and to go back to the drachma? Or are we going to stabilise Greece, its economy and its democracy? That's what we're voting on.
The government pulled off a narrow victory with just 152 votes in a 300-seat chamber. The cost-cutting measures, worth 13.5 billion euros, include tax hikes, a 2-year increase in the retirement age, and further cuts in pensions and salaries over the next 2 years. The vote came hours after some 80,000 people took to the streets and violence erupted. Greek public services have again been on strike for 2 days. The next step, Parliament will have to pass the 2013 budget on Sunday. Provided this goes through, EU finance ministers are expected to agree on easing the terms of Greece's bailout loans on Monday, though this will also need parliamentary approval in several countries. Athens could finally receive the next instalment of the international aid, worth 31.5 billion euros, in late November. Without outside help, the government will run out of money before the end of the month. So Greece may be able to breathe a sigh of relief, but only for now. The measures may help reduce the country's public debt, but they will also hurt the economy. That's set to enter a 6th year of recession, with unemployment at a staggering 25%.
Well, now let's get some of the day's company news. And authorities have searched the German offices of European Aerospace Group, EADS. It's part of a probe into alleged corruption at the company. The investigation is focused on the sale of Eurofighter jets to Austria. Well, this Thursday, EADS announced net profits for the latest quarter, virtually flat at 309 million euros.
French luxury group Hermès has upped its forecast for the year. The company reported sales of 850 million euros in the latest quarter. The maker of Birkin bags says it expects sales overall this year to rise 13%.
But bad news for India's Kingfisher Airlines. The company lost $138 million in the latest quarter. Kingfisher has been grounded since October after its license was suspended over safety concerns. The airline's lenders say it must raise $1 billion in new capital by the end of November.
Now, growth in China is still robust, but it has slowed down this year.
Yes, it has. About 7.5% growth expected for 2012. Now, that would be good for most countries, but in China, that's a slowdown from the average of over 10% in the last 30 years. Well, the outgoing president, Hu Jintao, has been speaking this Thursday about the need for a new economic growth model, and that echoes wider calls for new ways to stimulate the Chinese economy.
The new leader of China's Communist Party will have to boost the country's economy. While China's GDP grew more than 10% during most of Hu Jintao's time in office, this year it is expected to slip to just 7.5%.
The growth model that served China pretty well very well for the first 2 decades. In the third decade has become very, very strained and unsustainable. Unfortunately, it should have changed much earlier, and as a result, we've got a significant buildup of debt.
China heavily relies on exports, and the country is feeling the pinch of the European debt crisis and economic weakness in the US. In July, exports grew by just 1%, the lowest since 2009. China's sales to European countries fell 16.2%. With exports down, boosting domestic consumption could help save China's economy. But that may take higher salaries, which could in turn affect the country's competitiveness. China's central bank has already cut interest rates to stimulate the economy. But many businesses hope the government will also launch an aid package.
Well, one other piece of company news here in France. Société Générale reported profits down sharply, net income down 86% on the same period last year. The company blamed losses on its holdings in Greece and the US.
We're going to stay in France with a new tax, nicknamed the Nutella tax.
That's right. Bit of a strange name for a tax.
I'm intrigued.
I'm sure you are, because you're a Nutella fan, aren't you? Well, the
am.
French Senate is putting up taxes on products containing palm oil, and Nutella contains palm oil. In fact, 15% of that. Now, they've put up the tax by 300% because they say it can be bad for your health. They're forgetting, of course, the very good side of Nutella, which is that it's also very tasty for you. But what's the effect if you're a Nutella fan? Well, it could add about 30 centimes to the €37 price of a 5-kilogram pot. It's being estimated. It's not a huge amount extra to pay, perhaps.
I might still keep buying a bit of Nutella every now and again. All right, thank you very much, Matthew. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.